its way down. It is going to be, and they've pulled all the cars off now, so the peloton is making its way through, it's becoming compact as they corkscrew off the mountains. Things looking good for Alessandro Petacchi already as he races back into the picture. They still have to solve how are they going to catch those 8 leaders. I think we'll see them come to the front very shortly. We'll just take another short break. See you in a moment. And welcome back. The peloton just taking a little bit easy now as they've regrouped on the descent of all of the mountains today, and they've got the leaders not in sight but about 48 seconds at a guess behind those 8 riders in the lead. Now at the moment we are hearing 2 more, and there they are, 2 more riders have abandoned in that rapid chase back. Bonomi of Seiko, so they've lost 3 riders from that team now, and Jorg Schaffath from the Telecom team, they're 2 down following the crash yesterday of Cadel Evans. So that's really bad luck for Seiko. They've had such a wonderful year, but things not looking too bright for them in these early days in the Tour of Spain. Now, you mentioned the Condor earlier, Paul, but I think you meant Vulture, didn't you?
I actually meant the Vulture. In fact, I think I just saw 1 or 2 cruising through there. They're very much habituated in this area, and I feel a bit sorry for those 2 guys off the back because the Vultures are probably soaring above them, waiting to pick their bones.
Exactly right. Reintroduced into this part of Spain. Now, there's still a group trying to get across there, and I'm just wondering if, in fact, Petacchi has bridged the gap or whether he's in that bunch off on the right there. It looks like he might still be looking to bridge. It's been a desperate hour or so in the race, and I think they should well integrate. It's just on 37 miles still to race to the finish. There's the reintroduced Vultures flying across the top of our picture for the ornithologists watching as we go down to the head of the peloton, who are no longer in angry mood, which is quite interesting really when you think that they have a rider up front who would become the first clear leader of the Vuelta if he is to stay away, and that's Isidro Nozal of the Once team.
The race is going to change an awful lot over the next few days. We have another flat stage tomorrow after a transfer tonight. The riders moving down to Soria for a long flat stage to Zaragoza, a race which could be very much influenced by the crosswinds, which are always very common in this area, and then the first individual time trial, which is almost 50 kilometers in length. And I have a feeling we will see a serious change in the overall classification, because in fact, just looking down the list of the overall classification, Dario Frigo, who's an excellent individual time trialist, is actually only a minute 25 off the lead right now, so he could climb up into the leader's jersey.
And there's further confirmation there of the 2 retirements, Ritardo, Bonomi and Schafrath. So 2 men have gone today. Our field is now down already to 190 as we just prepare to leave the gorges here. We're entering the feeding station. Well, in fact, we're leaving this feeding station here with the 8 leaders. We're going to start the clock on the banner.
Very nice little feed zone there on an uphill. It's always nice to see that because, of course, the speed comes down. Here's the leaders on the road, our little breakaway. Nozal, the principal beneficiary of this breakaway so far. He will inherit the golden jersey if this group stays away to the finish, even by 1 second, because he's on the same time as De Galdiano, Serrano, and his teammate Rodriguez, who is in the golden jersey of race leader right now. Going through his feed bag there is Nozal, looking for the tastiest bits. He'll stash those away and carry on.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're the 8 leaders. Here are the peloton. The clock is running on them now. And behind, we still believe that Petacchi has not yet bridged the gap, but he's not that far behind. But what the referees did when they spotted the group coming back was pull off all of the following cars. And of course, the carrot was taken out of the equation, so the riders are left in no man's land again.
But as they go through the feeding station, you get a time check there, and I would think it's just outside the 1 minute mark. And because of the fact they're going through the feeding station right now, the main field will slow down just a little bit, and the confusion of taking on board their feeding bags. And almost certainly any moment now we should get a glimpse of Alessandro Petacchi coming back into the main field. And it is quite remarkable, the psychology of a sprinter, because if he gets back into this race right now, he will completely change from being a beaten man to being a man who thinks he can take out the win. There's Eric Zabel, and looking back, there are an awful lot more team cars, and I'm not quite sure whether or not Petacchi has made it, because that group looks like a very large field, so they probably did, in the confusion of the feed zone, reintegrate the peloton.
Yeah, it's a very large peloton now, so I would think he's safely back in, and if he is, he'll make his way up to the front, or at least he'll send his team up to the front to do some chasing, because that breakaway just over a 60-second lead at this point, and just on 38 miles still left to race. So it's a possibility here, Bob, that these riders could stay away today. They stay pretty high, although there's no more real climbs of the day. There's the latest check at 1 minute and 6 seconds. We hover around the 850 metres mark now, all of the way into the finish down at Burgos. Pataki did win at Burgos last year, and getting the first shot at it again. It's exactly the same finish as last year, so I'm sure he'll remember it. There's 3 roundabouts on the run into the line, and I'm sure he'll be well aware of those. So the feed have had their lunch. It's now the animals have had their lunch rather. It's now time to get on with the chase back as they start to throw off those little musettes. All the food they didn't want goes in the bags as well, and they'll just take on the drinks. We'll take another break. Rejoin us. And welcome back as we're looking there briefly at the men doing the pacemaking now. 8 riders, 1 minute 6 seconds up, and the field generally has regrouped now at the back of the field. A big chase, and Pataki, there he is on number 6 there, has got back into the frame. So he's now in with a chance of winning this stage. He'll need a few deep breaths, wisely eating little and often before the finish after that real tough chase. As we now move up to the head of the bunch here, and in fact at the head of the peloton, this is the head of the break, in the peloton, Pataki's boys have been sent to the front. There are 3 riders pacing at the front of the pack, looking to bridge about 66 seconds. There is the breakaway. Nozal, Laguna, the 2 Echeverrias, unrelated but on the same team. Gutierrez, Cardenas, Jacka and Van Goulen. Now Van Goulen is a new young Belgian, Bob, and he's getting his first big crack at a major stage race for Quick-Step.
He's had a very good season so far this year, and he is quite a good sprinter. So if that breakaway stays all the way to the finish, I'm sure if they got close, they'd start to attack each other. But if they did arrive intact, Van Goulen would have a very good chance to win. Nozal also is up in that, and you have to really give it credit to the Once team for having this race hardwired. They had Vicioso in the breakaway yesterday. He would have gotten the jersey, and today Nozal. They wanted to give him the jersey yesterday. Rodriguez and Nozal kind of finished too close together. Rodriguez got enough points to keep the jersey. Manolo Saez, the team manager, saying in order to show real team unity, they have no qualms about sharing the jersey amongst the riders in it. They've won this Vuelta a Espana 4 times. Zula twice. The great Laurent Jalabert, recently retired, won that, and Melchior Mauri won it for the first time for them way back in 1991. They've had numerous podiums. They've brought a great squad here. You can see in the points jersey, that's the polka dot jersey now, on the shoulders of Igor Gonzalez de Galeano, perhaps their best guy to have a chance in the overall at the end of these 3 weeks. But so far, they've got a tight lock on the golden jersey.
And here we are, Volodymyr Gustov, the Ukrainian member of the Fassa Bortolo team, setting the pace there. I think he was with Tasato, as they now try to sort out a gap which is beginning to grow. Actually, it's up to 1 minute and 28 seconds now, and David Echeverria also packs quite a punch in the sprint. He was the champion of Spain as an amateur when he turned professional, and he won that in the sprint, and since then of course he's had a very, very good professional career. And the race now looking down into the last 50 kilometres of the day, just 30 miles now to go to the finish, and this breakaway are going to sense they have a chance here. Although 50 kilometres is a long way, Paul. It's more than an hour.
It's an awful long amount of racing before they get down to the finish line. There's Van Goulen just on the far side in the blue and white jersey of Quick-Step. It's actually his 2nd year as a professional. He rode the Vuelta a Espana last year and finished the race, and because of his performance here, he was actually picked to go and ride the World Championships for Belgium, which is quite rare for a young rider to get selection for the World Championships in his first year as a professional.
And there he is, Van Goulen, young man on the block, on one of the changing guard now, as he drives on through and gets the taste of a breakaway here and a chance possibly. The man that worked hard to get across there, number 54, is Denis Laguna. He had to cross virtually on his own, but in the end he got a helping hand when Unai Echeverria joined on as well. In the blue jersey here, which is the equivalent of the combine jersey competition, that's Isrida Nozal on the Once squad. They're sharing all the jerseys amongst themselves just now, and Nozal the most likely candidate for the golden jersey if he stays away.
Well, Bob, actually, just looking at these guys right now, it's psychologically very difficult for them because the blue jersey of Isidro Nozal, he's under team orders not to contribute at all to the pacemaking. The leader of the bike races in his team, he's sitting there hoping that the break will succeed. But the fact that he's not working, it really is causing a bit of miscontent in that leading group of 8 riders, isn't it? Because it seemed to me as if they weren't quite as organised as they were maybe 15 kilometres ago.
Yes, absolutely. We saw Fabian Jecker, and very strong veteran bike racer, trying to sit on the wheel of Nozal, realizing that if Nozal is not working, then he doesn't want to contribute either, and don't want to give the advantage to anybody else in the peloton that you are with in the breakaway. Minute 32, so it's starting to go up a little bit. I think we might see the peloton really start to pour on the coals in the finale if they can keep it within 2 or 3 minutes to the breakaway. The breakaway really needs to get organized right now and go very, very hard for the next 10 or 15 kilometers if they're going to have a chance to stay away. Nozal might get the jersey even if they do get caught, and he gets a couple of places ahead of Joaquin Rodriguez, our current leader.
So we look at the highways cutting through the countryside here in Spain. The peloton gradually losing ground. And don't forget, tomorrow we continue our live coverage coming to you at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, as it has done today. Sevilla to Zaragoza, 165 kilometres. Pedro Delgado himself has said that is a flat stage, but it can be a most difficult stage because of the wind. So this is the main field under the escort now of 3 riders of Alessandro's Fassa Bortolo team. They're just waiting, I think, for their team leader to get the food down, get his strength back after that tough chase, and then hope he can recover and provide us with another magical sprint at the finish. But they're looking to close 1 minute and 32 seconds on a breakaway, which at the minute is actually gaining time over the field. If it stays away, then there will be a change in leadership. We'll know soon. As we look down on the leaders now, 8 of them, about 1 minute and 32 seconds ahead, 45 kilometres to race, and we're racing to the beauty now of the province of Burgos, and it's the capital of the province, Burgos itself, where we'll finish. About 26.5 miles to race just now towards the finish, but there will definitely be a change of leadership if this breakaway stays away. It's a bit early to say whether it will or not.
Well, I tell you what, looking at the main field right now, they certainly are pedaling with anger because they're stretched out into a very long line. The average speed in that group there, as we look down on them from the helicopter, is probably pretty close to 32, 33 miles an hour. I think next time we get a time check, that time check we had a few moments ago of 1 minute 30 seconds will have started to come down.
Now, Bob, just looking at the peloton, we're looking at the leaders at the moment here as they're escorted by Cardenas. Bob, so many big names have lost time in just a couple of days of racing. It's not quite the Tour de France the way they ride the Tour of Spain, is it?
I mean, it's so wide open from the very first day. You start with the team time trial. There's gaps opening up right there unless you have a great team time trial. Only 3 teams really, you could say, did a good one, and Once certainly did. US Postal did a fabulous ride, and Kelme was right in there, keeping their GC contenders very close. Sevilla still having a chance at that point. You look at a rider like Aitor Gonzalez, who won this race last year. He comes with the Fassa Bortolo team. It's obvious they're not as motivated for the Tour of Spain as they are for the other Grand Tours throughout the year. He is already 2 minutes and 44 seconds behind. Now, he can make that up on a climber in the first flat time trial, which is almost 50 kilometers in length. However, you're already at a disadvantage of almost 3 minutes, and maybe a little bit of question coming into his mind, changing over from the Kelme team, where they were totally committed to this bike race last year, over to an Italian team, Fassa Bortolo. Not the same incentive. I think that's why you see such huge gaps. A couple of guys already out of it. Levi Leipheimer 20 minutes down already on the Rabobank team, and Cadel Evans going home for the Telecom team.
And also, Bob, psychologically, for a man like Aitor Gonzalez, the defending champion, when you get dropped on the first category climb of a race like the Vuelta a España, it really starts to work on the back of the mind. The team will also be questioning whether or not he should be protected on these flat stages. They know they've got guaranteed success with a man like Alessandro Patacchi, and they're more likely to be looking after the Italian sprinter than they will after Aitor Gonzalez over these first few flat stages.
Well, just looking down the breakaway there, Paul, we've got little David Echevarria in it. He rode his 6th Tour de France this year, but he didn't enjoy that hot time trial, did he? He was eliminated on the Stage 12 time trial down in Gaillac, I think it was.
right down in
Very
there.
unusual to see riders eliminated, but he was caught pacing, wasn't he?
Well, he was caught pacing, and we actually saw it very clearly on the television coverage for a long period of time. The reason he was actually eliminated was as a special penalty, and you're penalised a certain amount of time for the number of kilometres you follow the rider who catches you, and that penalty was added to his time. And with that, he was actually eliminated from the race before we even got down to the Spanish mountains, where he expected to shine. You can see now the faces here on the riders of Alessandro Petacchi's Faso Bortolo team. They really are giving everything to try and pull back that gap. In fact, they really want to pull it back together because, as we mentioned a little earlier, the last time that the Vuelta a Espana came to Burgos 12 months ago, the first man across the line was none other than Alessandro Petacchi. You mentioned the final kilometres a little earlier as well, Phil. There are 3 roundabouts in the last 3 kilometres, but the last 1.2 kilometres is perfectly straight. And if these guys have got any strength left in their legs after a long chase like this, it's a great finish for the sprinters.
Well, they believe in Petacchi, there's no doubt about that. He's already, although he's equalled the feat of Poblet and Baffy of 1958 and 1956, he in fact is the number 1 of the 3 riders who have won stages in all 3 Grand Tours in the same year, because the others won 8 and 6 while he's already got 11, so he can build on that. There aren't that many stages which are flat this year for the sprinters, but I think he's going to be present on as many as he can be. But he has, let's not forget, retired from the Giro d'Italia this year when leading the race on points, retired from the Tour de France when leading the race on points. Who knows what he'll do here?
Well, he has said that he wanted to finish this bike race, and he certainly has to get his body right through the mountains and the Pyrenees first. And here is the indication that, in fact, the job of work being done by Faso Bortolo is a good one, because the time gap has now come down to 1 minute and 12 seconds.
Down to 1 minute 12, so they are slowly but surely dragging them back. But they're on a little bit of a nasty climb here, so we'll see. Well, the break goes on, but let me remind you that if you've missed any stage of the Vuelta, then do tune into OLN every Thursday night and catch up with the latest insight. OLN Summer Sports Zone. We always feature highlights, news and results from domestic, international road racing and mountain biking, and you can check it out every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time. Looking at the peloton, Oscar Sevilla in the middle, Mr. Babyface himself, as he now looks to have recovered from the little shunt he had yesterday in the last kilometre. Reports were good this morning, said he was okay. I think he most certainly is, because he wasn't dropped on the big sort out on the first category climb. He was always near the head of the peloton. Yes, the field have regrouped, but if they hadn't have regrouped, Oscar would have played a card today. So I think he has well recovered from that. And the big danger, I think, is the Banesto team as a team.
Well, they are one of the 2 top teams that have dominated Spanish cycling for the last number of years, because they have been along with riders like Pedro Delgado and, of course, Miguel Indurain, who won the Tour of Spain for them. They, in fact, as a team, won the Tour of Spain under the banner Reynolds, because it's a team that's had a very long history and one of the teams that will be disappearing from the sport at the end of this season. And they've also got an added advantage this afternoon, because one of the Osa brothers, I think it's Aitor, is having his 30th birthday, so he'll be looking for the win on the streets of Burgos.
Looking like Michael Barry on the front there, Bob. Tell us a little bit about him, because he's getting a crack at a stage race for US Postal here.
Well, the last time we saw Michael Barry was in the Dauphiné when he had a crash on one of the I think it was the Galibier descent, and he absolutely got torn to shreds in that.
Yeah, he did.
He had cuts to his back, to his legs, elbow, and he's had to train in the midst of a lot of pain after that. He's come into good form here in the Vuelta a España, and he's done a great job helping Roberto Heras steer near the front of the bike race. And we saw during that chase, they were chasing the rider Jose Azevedo from Once, who got off the front after the big Category 1. Michael Barry was right in the front, trading pulls with Big George Hincapie. Michael Barry, a very nice guy, and having a crack at a huge stage race now in Spain, riding as a domestique for Roberto Heras, perhaps the most fancied of all the favorites so far for this Vuelta a España. Heras himself, maybe a little bit of disappointment at the Tour. He finished in the 30s. He finished in the top 10 the last 2 years before this year on GC at the Tour, even while helping Lance Armstrong win that event. So Heras, when he has form, is untouchable in the mountains.
All right, well, let's wish Michael Barry luck. He never finished, in fact, the Vuelta last year. Maybe he'll have a better crack at it this time around. The field on a little bit of a climb, and you can tell that by when you look at some of these riders here, they are still very much under pressure as they try to bring back those 8 men in front. They might just do it. We'll take a break. And we're looking at the peloton, 42 kilometres to go. We have just had a time check of exactly 1 minute. Don't like the look of those clouds, Paul. I hope the rain stays away this time.
The clouds are very ominous, especially at this time of year at the northern part of Spain, and it's really looking rather difficult for these riders as they head up towards the Pyrenees, and I wonder if they will have bad weather when they go there. If they do, then it really will decimate the field. We're facing up towards the end of this week to 3 days of very difficult mountain climbing. 3 days where the race will go across for 2 of those days onto French soil, and 3 mountaintop finishes, and I think after that we'll have a chance to see whether Roberto Harris will be winning the Tour of Spain for the second time. I think he's improving in form, Bob, towards the latter part of this season. He had a very difficult Tour de France, as Phil said earlier, and that mainly because of the illness which seemed to strike him. He had an intestinal problem, which it's not the best place, the Tour de France, is it, to get sick?
It's the worst place in the whole world you can get sick during a bike race. It makes it so very difficult to continue making the pace day after day if you have even the slightest cold or stomach upset.
There's actually been another split here. You see that red car, that's a car of the race referee, and he's out of the top of the roof there looking back because he's making what is called the barrage. He's keeping the race cars behind until the race is actually sorted out. I would think 1 or 2 riders have been dropped. We saw Jans Verrada at the back of the group a few moments ago, obviously in difficulty on a climb which hasn't even been categorized on the race profile. That's the amazing thing about many of these races. They categorize certain climbs for the King of the Mountains competition, but certainly as we head across the plateau of Spain, it's not completely flat.
And in fact, one rider off the back there, Jose Antonio Pecheroman, he is also off the back and in trouble, which we're very surprised at. We really fancied him to do something special in this year's Vuelta. He's had 6 wins this year, including the Euskel Bicicleta, which is a stage race, and he won the time trial in that as well as 2 other stages. He also won the mountain time trial and overall the Tour of Catalonia. It looks as though he's had a little bit of problems with his team, and he's leaving the team at the end of the year.
Psychologically, I don't think he was ready for the Vuelta a Espana this year. Big battle between himself and his team manager Moreno forcing him to take part in the Vuelta a Espana. And when you're in a team and the ambiance is not all that good, especially with the team management, and towards the end of the season when you know you're going to a different team next year, it's not always the ideal way to go into a race, which is obviously as difficult as the Vuelta a Espana.
Well, so Nazal there put his hand up briefly. He wants to have a word with his manager. We couldn't read the white board there, which was giving the latest check. The last one we got was 1 minute. That's Unai Echevarria at the back of the breakaway. 1 or 2 of the orange jersey of Euskaltel here trying to mix in and slow down the chase and give their 2 men in the break a chance here, because they'll be very confident that David Echevarria could win this stage if they can stay away.
Just see the spotted jersey there in the middle in the second row of riders. That's in fact in Spain. The polka dot jersey is the jersey for the king of the sprints, rather strangely enough, and that's at the moment being worn by Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano. This is the group of riders who have been dropped off the back end of the main field, and as you can see, they're battling to try and stay in contact. There is the peloton there, slowing down slightly in these crosswinds, and it's being told to us that in fact it's Alessandro Petacchi again in difficulty on this rather slight incline, but I think he'll get back with no problems.
Well, again, the crosswinds ripped away. All of a sudden, somebody left the door open, and everybody behind looked over and saw, heavens, the main field has ridden away from us. It looks as though this time, at least, they're going to yet again chase back in. But how much is this hurting the sprinters' legs as Petacchi tries to get back in? In fact, it looks like Petacchi down the bottom of our picture. They're looking for wheels to grab. The main field then. Well, there's Petacchi. He's 4th in line at the moment, and the pacemaking there being done by his teammate Juan de los Angeles. I think Jan Verrada might be in this back group as well, because also Lampre are working very hard.
And there's Max van Heeswijk as well, the US postal rider, a very good sprinter and riding the Vuelta a España, not selected for the Tour de France team, and he's also at the back of this group. But if you see there further up the road, the main field is spread right across the width of this huge highway heading down towards Burgos. I would say that very shortly these guys will recover once more, but it just goes to show how difficult it can be trying to ride a bike race in the crosswinds, these cross tailwinds which are coming from the northwest, pushing the speed up to average speeds this afternoon of, again, pretty close to 45 kilometers an hour.
So he's looking very, very bitter, this chase. It's going to hurt them. They will get back, but it's going to hurt them yet again. This, although we're clear of the official climbs of the day, if you look at the profile of the route today, the route carries on slightly uphill for a considerable distance And the gap now, 1:03 and 1:20 on those two leaders.
Well, I think the main field have actually switched off.
8 leaders, I'm sorry for that.
I think the main field have actually switched off a little bit, Phil, because they know they can catch those guys whenever they want. Because as we tilted up just a few moments ago, you could actually see all the cars behind the 8 leaders. The whole of this bike race is more than likely going to come back together in the last 15 kilometers or so. You see the main field spread right across the full width of the road. But it is so difficult when you're in a situation like these guys are right now. They were dropped on that slight climb. They've got to battle with all of their might to try and get back into the peloton.
This is a dress rehearsal for the roads tomorrow down to Zaragoza. I'm sure of that, because the crosswind will be even worse tomorrow. But Pataki is just going to stay in this group, hope that the others do the job for him and put him back into that peloton. But you've got to pay attention at the tail of the peloton. If that wind picks you off, this is what happens. We'll take another break. Join us in a moment. And here we are, welcome back to the Tour of Spain now as we run down to the last few kilometres of the day, 36 still to go, and they haven't gained a centimetre during the commercial break. They are still split, which indicates, Bob, just how fast this peloton is riding now.
Well, the crosswinds are blowing the race apart right now, and it's very hard to close the gap when they're racing hard in the front. You can see the chase group there now. They moved over to the left-hand side of the road to give the other riders in the tail end group the chance to come through and work a little bit, contribute to the chase. But like you said, they haven't closed 1 meter of that gap, and it's just so much torture when you can see them right up the road there, just a few seconds ahead, but you can't close a gap. It's reminiscent of the classics that we see when the strongest riders are in the front in the echelons. The other riders, desperate to catch on, almost never do, and they are chasing flat out behind and not closing the gap down at all, even though it doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure on the front group there, the main body of the peloton. These riders having a very difficult chase, and it'll take the sting out of the sprinters' legs as they get back in. But a rider like Alessandro Pataki only needs about 2 or 3 kilometers in the main body of the field to be totally regenerated and have a good chance. We've seen him win so many sprints this year. It's hard to imagine him losing one if he was in the main group.
This is a horrendous situation to be in. You can just see the peloton in front. You feel as if you can almost touch the backs of the riders on the tail end of the peloton, but you just cannot bring that gap back down. But it looks right now as if they're starting to slowly edge towards the tail end of the peloton. But it's going to have to be a few kilometers for Alessandro Pataki to recuperate and try and get his sprinting legs back on.
Well, just to remind you, there's still 8 riders in the lead. The last check we got was a while back now at 1 minute, but we have not seen them coming close, and we haven't actually had any shots of them for a while either. But this is a fine, desperate, I think it's either Scarponi or Perdigero there, who's trying to cross the gap for the Domina Vacanzi team, and he's formed a nice little gap. Good attraction to rip a few more off the front. It looks at last to be a few deep breaths soon. They might well latch on, but you know, just one mistake by one rider in the line when the wind has come across them has detached them from the back of the bunch, and the result is 10 to 15 minutes of incredible effort to get back onto the tail of the back of the field there. This should bring Pataki back into play, but you know, we're in an area now, as you can see, it's very barren out here. We knew the crosswinds would blow as we head south. They're coming in from the northwest, cross to tail. If you get the cross to cause the split and then the tailwind gets picked up, then you are going to go away.
It's also quite interesting because if you're in a group like this, it doesn't really look as if anybody is working all that hard on the front. But what happens is the impetus of the main field sucks a lot of the riders along, and they'll be actually floating. If you've got the nerve to ride in the middle of this peloton, you actually get sucked along at speeds approaching 55 kilometers an hour. And if you can find the right place to position yourself, it really is almost a floating ride right in the middle of that group of riders.
Well, there they are. And the Benesto boys just driving wisely on the front, using common sense here and letting the chaos be behind. Now then, if you're looking for something to watch at 10 o'clock, OLN at 10 always brings you the latest shows on the network. So tune in Monday through Wednesday for shows like Beach Ambush, Bragging Rights, Mysterious Encounters and Outdoor Outtakes. The new lineup will begin on September the 29th, and that, of course, is at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time. There they are, and that is the main field. I'm not sure whether that's the main field. That's the chase group all, and they've all come back together in a nice little pack.
Well, I think the fact is it's a block tailwind right now. If we pull back, we'll get a chance to see the main field is not that far in front. But again, these riders can just about see the back end of the peloton, but they just cannot nail down that last 100 meters or so. The leading group of 8 riders, let's not forget, are still off the front, leading by around about 55 seconds. And it really is astounding that these guys at the back with Alessandro Petacchi have been chasing like anything for the last 10 or 15 kilometers. They've just not been able to nail back the last 100 meters.
Well, perhaps Angelo Furlan, who is in this front group at the moment, have better luck than he did yesterday, because he went down in that crash we saw a couple of kilometers out from the line and lost time because he was outside the final kilometer. But more importantly for Furlan, he lost his chance at going for the stage win, which is much more important, of course, to a sprinter.
Well, I'm surprised that Fassa Portola hasn't sent more riders back to have helped Alessandro Petacchi get back across. The team director there letting that gap open up rather precipitously here at the moment, unless it's Alessandro himself that has said don't have his guys chase anymore. It's a very hard chase now. You can see they're in one long line at the back, about 25 or 30 riders trying to close the gap to this huge group that is chasing the breakaway.
Well, I'm not sure whether one or two did scurry across there and left this lot behind here who weren't taking part or the opportunity to cross the gap. During that brief moment, the peloton did seem to slow down. I still think Petacchi is back here, but obviously we haven't got a motorbike down there at the moment, so we can't get in amongst the riders, because the referees, I have to say, are doing a good job today. They've kept these gaps nice and clear of vehicles and giving the riders no opportunity to make full use of any drafting system that might be in between. One rider in the middle, and today we've lost 2 riders on the road. 2 riders didn't start, so there's 190 riders left now. Still got those 18 teams of 22 with all 9 men. Poor old Seiko, they've lost 3 now of their 9 riders with the retirement today of yet another member of their team. Once at the front, sitting very pretty. They've had this race by the scruff of the neck since they won the team time trial, and now they're looking for a time gain here if Isidro Nozal can stay clear in that breakaway.
Well, in fact, the fact that there are no time bonuses in the Tour of Spain has made it rather complicated to decide at the end of every stage who is going to be the leader of the bike race. Well, in a race when the riders are equal on time, it's actually the addition of their places in the main field at the end of each stage. And the reason that Joaquim Rodriguez is leading the race is because he finished 2nd on the first stage, 5th on the next stage, and 29th yesterday, giving a total of 36 points. He's beating his teammate Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano by just 2 points, and a further 2 points back is Isidro Nozal. So if Nozal finishes off the front end of the main field and the time difference comes into play, well, logic says that the jersey will switch across to him. But if they finish in the main field, they are so close together that we're really going to have to keep a very close eye on where they finish in the main pack. It's going to be a mathematical nightmare once again, once I think this group is going to get caught.
Well, there we are now, 29 kilometres from the meta, the finishing line, and the gap, the latest check we've got is 50 seconds. So they're not getting away, but they're not coming back that quick either, as we've now got plenty of riders willing to work hard. That's Gutierrez of Kelme. This is David Echevarria, and this is his mate, namesake, Unai Echevarria from Venezuela, and 2 Euskadel boys on the front. They'll want it to stay away, as the peloton will try and hunt them down. We'll take a break. And welcome back. Yes, these are the 8 leaders. They established over the top of the first category climb of the day, and it looks as though they have a real chance, because we've just had a time check of 1 minute and 22 seconds, and that might be enough, although Petacchi's boys will think differently, Paul. Now, Petacchi has come back now. The group is again all together, but they've turned off.
Well, they've turned off, and I tell you what, Alexandro Petacchi will be very happy about this as we get the time check coming through at 1 minute 22 seconds. It's still possible to pull back the 8 leaders, but they need to get themselves organised pretty smartish if they want to pull them back, because it's going to take a concerted effort right now by a couple of teams to try and pull back that breakaway group, because last time we saw the 8 leaders, it actually looked as if a certain amount of organisation and urgency had come back into their pedalling action, Bob.
Oh, absolutely. They are doing a really good job in the finale. There are 2 Euskaltel Euskadi riders. I think if I was their team manager, I'd have at least one of them sitting on in the breakaway to have fresher legs for the sprint. The main beneficiary of that breakaway is Nozal on the Once team, not obliged to work because they already have the leader's jersey on the shoulders of Joaquin Rodriguez. If they do stay away to the finish, he will inherit that golden jersey. They tried to get him to do into that. He was one of the local riders as we got into Santander yesterday. Rodriguez did a little bit too much work, though, got a little too close to the leaders in the sprint, and he kept the golden jersey as race leader. But if this breakaway stays away and they're making very good progress, you can see Nozal definitely get the golden jersey at the end of the day.
Well, these 8 men then with that lead of 122. Looking at the front of the peloton there, virtually the whole head of the peloton were teammates of the riders in this breakaway. Now, at 27 kilometres from the finish, that is not a normal situation. You normally see the sprinters getting the men up and chasing down the breakaways. There's the list of riders for you. Now, there was only one Fassa Bortolo rider trying to get in between the teammates of the breakaways, but that's obviously why the gap has opened.
I think the fact is that Alessandro Petacchi has only just got himself back onto the main field. They need to try and recuperate a little bit for 4 or 5 kilometres and then get themselves organised. But they may well have got the word from Petacchi that after all of his chasing, he really feels that he might not have the legs today to take out the win. So he said to the boys, well, let's not chase right now because I'm not really feeling all that good. We'll let somebody else chase and see what happens.
Well, there is one of the Fassa Bortolo boys stretching and aching back. A lot of work done already and got them absolutely nowhere so far today. But you can see the riders here at the front. The Fassa rider on the left now is trying to get his team up here, and it looks a little bit as though he's wondering what on earth has happened to the boys today, because they're not really organising this very well. Zabel's got a telecom rider over to the left. Zabel himself rides in the white jersey because he's the current champion of Germany. That's a title he's won twice in his professional career. And Bobby, amazingly, that's the man who's won 177 races.
One of my favorite bike racers of all time. Not only a great sprinter, he has a lot of resistance as well. He's won a lot of races because he's able to stay in the front group as long as there's at least 50 or 60 riders left in the group after some of the hard climbs. I remember a couple years ago in the Tour de France, he stayed in the front group when there was only about 50 guys. That made the time limit. They had to allow a whole huge group come in, but Eric Zabel, one of the toughest bike racers out there.
You can see what's happened here. We climbed right onto the top of the Escudo and then we stayed pretty high, as we will, all the way to the finish. The contour indicating a slightly uphill finish, but I don't think that will be evident when we get down to Burgos, because it's pretty much the same all the way. It is a very good sprint finish in Burgos. We're at 25 kilometres to go, which is just 15 miles, which is in turn about 35-37 minutes of cycling. They're going to have to really do a lot more than freewheel.
They're going to have to do something special if they want to pull them back right now. And just coming back to what you were saying about Eric Zabel a few moments ago, we tend to be a little bit overcritical sometimes, saying that Eric Zabel hasn't had such a great season this year. But in fact, he's the second most successful rider on the circuit this season. Petacchi is the most successful with 22 wins. Eric Zabel is second with 11 wins to his credit so far. And a lot of the times he's been beaten, it's been by Alessandro Petacchi.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Eric is still very much at the top of his profession, and he just loves cycling. You were telling me, Bob, he has a basement at home where he keeps every one of his trophies, so he must have a huge basement.
He has a huge basement. Also, all of the bicycles that are special to him, he keeps in there. I think he has 35 or 40 of his racing bikes that he's kept. All of the green jerseys that he's won. He's had a special bike painted by Pinarello, his bike sponsor, for many years. He's had a green prints. They are gorgeous bikes that he's used on the last day of the Tour de France, and they've all gone into his basement. I don't think it would be too bad to visit and go for a bike ride with Eric.
And he's an absolute gentleman. I can vouch for that. I met him in a restaurant once in South Africa, and he came over. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Eric, don't speak to me. I'm on holiday." So he turned and spoke to my wife, and then spoke to the lady who was with us he'd never met before, and he never spoke to me again.
Well, he did send you a bottle of wine, I think, on that occasion, so that was very decent of him. In fact, a lot of the European professionals training in the winter season in South Africa because the weather is so clement at that time of the year to get themselves ready for the very tough European season. These guys now are getting a little bit nervous, and this will actually work against them. We can see one or two riders looking for the break in this group of 8 riders, looking to try and get rid of 1 or 2 unities from that leading group, and that's when their average speed will start to slow down somewhat. It is remarkable looking down at the peloton because they are absolutely flying along, and they're not actually chasing in earnest for the moment.
No, they're slightly downhill, but when they run round this corner, when you get the roads that twist and turn like this, each time the head of the peloton comes round and sees nobody in front, and as we speak it's gone up another 8 seconds here. Oh, and even more, still counting in fact. So this is quite a nice gain at this stage of the race inside the last 25 kilometres, and this is what the riders want to see in the lead and not what the riders want to see in the peloton. But when you come around those corners and see no cyclists, it's psychologically a little bit of a blow. Now, it might be that board there where the clock is running too, but it carries on. It must be on the top of this little rise. But this is enormous now, Paul. This is shot up here. We're going in excess of 2 minutes, and it's obviously on the entrance to the tunnel. So this is oaring very well now for the riders in the breakaway. Paul is right. If they start counter-attacking one another, they will lose the plot. They've got to keep working together at this stage of the race. But it's about 2 minutes 10 seconds as we disappeared into the tunnel, right down the tube. 2:17, there we are. So it's 2:17 the gap. We are heading for the 20 kilometres to go now, and at 2:17, I never thought this breakaway had a real chance, but I'm beginning to change my mind now, because look at the peloton. They are not racing at the moment. And boy, Isidro Nozell could be the next leader. We'll take a break. And welcome back. Well, we're looking at the composition of the breakaway here. Nozell is the best placed. He is third overall, same time as the leader. That is why he will be the next leader of this race if he wins the stage, or gains a single second in time, I should say. He doesn't have to win the stage. There are no time bonuses today. And we are under pressure now as the leaders are attacking one another.
Well, one rider just nipping off the front there, Unai Echevarria, but just a quick glimpse there of the experience, Bob, of Fabian Jecker trying to get the guys organised. He knows that you're not going to leap across one after the other and try and get across to a lone leader right now. What they have to do is organise themselves back into that two-line formation if they want to pull back that very vicious attack just inside of the last 20 kilometres to go.
That's a good card to play for Euskaltel Euskadi. Now his teammate David Echevarria can sit on the chase. If they do come back to him, I think we'll see the other Echevarria in the attack. Unai's teammate David go up the road as well. He's got a good little gap here, not very well organized at the moment. Fabian Jecker coming through, asking the rest of the riders in the breakaway to come through. Jose Enrique Gutierrez. Nozal himself could make a huge effort, you would imagine, since he hasn't done a lick of work throughout the whole of this breakaway. If he had to, he could probably get across to any of the other riders in the breakaway. But Unai Echevarria putting everything into this little escape right now. And when he looks back, he must see that he has a decent gap, because he keeps on pouring the coals onto this effort that he's making right now.
He's 30 years of age now, Unai Echevarria. He's only won 5 races, but he's had some great results. 4th and a 2nd place in the Classic Flèche Wallonne. And I remember when he got a stage win in the Dauphiné too. It was the 3rd day of that race. It wasn't finishing on top of the Ventoux, but it went over the top of that Giant of Provence. He won that stage as well, and that was a couple of years ago. So he is a something of a single day expert, which is rather unusual from the South Americas. But here we have Echevarria now playing the card, a card I suppose we would have expected, because he was one of only one team in this breakaway with a teammate in it. And when he did attack hard on the left of the road, he made sure that David Echevarria, no relation by the way, David is Spanish and Unai is Venezuelan, was right on the sharp end of this breakaway, so they didn't see him go.
Well, let's see if the other riders get organized. Fabian Jecker making the big effort now, knows that if he's going to have a chance to win a stage in the whole of the Tour of Spain, this is probably his best chance that he's going to get. He's trying to get the guys organized. Laguna coming through there, and it looks like Cardenas is going to come through, and Jose Enrique is going to come through as well. Now you have David Echevarria sitting on a very enviable position to be in. He's not obliged to work. His teammate has gone up the road. If they do catch him, he should have fresh legs enough to attack himself. He's going to close the gap to the 2 men in front, Gutierrez and Jecker, and we'll see if they're closing it down. It looks like you can just see Unai Echevarria just ahead of them, just right in front of them, with about 15 kilometers to go.
Well, I think the way it's gone now, it might well favour the breakaway, because they haven't attacked one another into a form of annihilating each other. That's 15 kilometres to go under that banner. That's just 9 miles to go as we head into the last sprint of the day, and that's not going to worry anybody because there's no actual points for the sprints here. It's just a little prize in the bank, and it goes towards the blue jersey competition. But now we're looking here at the breakaway. In the distance is Unai Echevarria. No wins, in fact, since that stage win in the Dauphiné in June 2001. And that's not because he's a bad cyclist, because he's a very, very good cyclist. It's just that the wins haven't come his way.
Well, one man having an excellent ride in the breakaway this afternoon. The best tactical move that Team Once could have played is Isidro Nozal. He's just been sitting there happy as anything at the back of the group. He doesn't have to do any work at all because it's his team that started the day with the overall lead. It was on the shoulders of Joaquim Rodriguez. It was only a question of points, but at the end of the day, if these boys do survive, he will give himself a very nice big buffer. You can just see round the corner the orange jersey there of Unai Echeverria. David Echeverria moving up into second place. He won't do anything at all to help Van Geulen win the blue jersey on the front there because he wants his teammate to have as big an advantage as possible. But it's still a very difficult thing to do to survive. And when you start looking over your shoulders like this, it's an indication that you're not feeling all that confident and you really are starting to lose the impetus. It's easy to make the initial gap, but to actually consolidate is quite a difficult thing to do.
Well, there won't be a golden jersey awaiting Unai because he's nearly 14 minutes behind overall, and he'd be lucky to scrape in by the seat of his pants, in frankness, because the race behind is still chasing. But what he is doing now is causing the breakaway to lift their pace and keep the peloton at bay. He goes under the sprint here in this town of Quintana Tuño at 137 kilometres covered. He is the leader on the road. Will he be the winner? We'll take a break. And welcome back. Well, the cat and mouse is beginning now. These are the 7 chasers, just approximately 11 seconds behind the one leader. Here he is, Unai Echeverria. He broke away at around about 20 kilometres from the finish. The 2 minutes 2 seconds on the peloton, and I must say the peloton seem to have given up for the day because they've turned off, and I'm quite surprised about that. But I must presume, Paul, that the Fassa Bortolo riders hurt themselves too much in repairing the damage on those chase backs.
Well, they had an awful long chase because they were basically chasing for around about 90 kilometres to pull their man Alessandro Patacchi back into the peloton, and maybe all of those kilometres of hard chasing in the tailwinds that we've been experiencing this afternoon have paid its toll on the leader and the man who joined that very select club of oh, there's a crash. They've gone down. Somebody, it seems to me, it looks as if that was Fabian Jecker. And I didn't really see what happened, but I think maybe one of the motorbikes touched his wheel.
Well, he was right behind that police motorcyclist, but I'm not sure whether he did a lack of concentration. He doesn't look very good at the moment. He's gone right down and he hasn't moved. Now, that really was a very nasty fall, that.
Well, they were sending a whole convoy of motorcycles past him at the very same time. The chaser swung across during the chase of Unai Echeverria, and I think he must have been clipped by one of the motorcycles, and he's gone down very hard.
Well, let's hope he's okay, because that was a most unfortunate accident. We might get a chance to see it again if our Spanish directions show us the slow motion replay. But oh, here we go. I was about to say what a great job. I don't know. He would just look behind this police site motor. I'm not too sure what happened. He may have clipped his panniers there as he moved across. But either way, he's had a nasty fall. And, you know, the way he's lying there, he might have hurt his collarbone because that's the angle of which he's on. So Fabian Jecker, who is riding very, very well in this race, looks now as though he's out. And that leaves only 6 riders in the chase now, and the peloton shortly to pass by.
Well, he doesn't look very good at all there. He went down very hard. When you go down there as quickly as that, you don't really have much time to take any evasive action. And I would say we're looking at a man who may well have broken a bone here right now because he's in serious difficulty. And the way he's holding himself, it could well be, well, it's hard to say. Tough bike riders. These guys, Bob, you know, it's amazing. We were both there, but those guys, to get up after a crash like that, he's obviously got to be a pretty tough man.
They have a big tailwind going very fast in the finale of a bike race. You're concentrated to the maximum degree on the job at hand, and when you hit the ground, it's such a shock. And he is torn up. It looks like he's going to be all right. Fabian Jecker, a very tough man. If this was a football match, I think they would have disqualified all the other teams in it, but it's a bike race, of course, and these riders are hard as coffin nails.
So Fabian Jecker, the 34-year-old from Switzerland, 4 wins this year, in tremendous pain here. He's going to ride to the finish, and then he'll have to go for x-rays, and let's hope that the news is good. Very, very unfortunate. I suspect he was moving to his left and looking to the right because there was movement on the right of the road, and didn't spot the back wheel of that motorcyclist that came by him. He's clipped it and he's gone down. Now back to the front here. It's a phrase I always get mixed up when I say that. We've got one rider. He must have just gone under what I think was the 8-kilometre banner as the clock has started. It might be the 9, but I think it was the 8. And Unai Echeverria, and there's only 5 men left, of which one is not going to chase. David Echeverria, in fact, Paul, has done a wonderful job of blocking the counter move here.
He certainly has. He's just sitting there looking over his shoulder to see what's going on, and then Unai Echeverria extending his advantage now to 22 seconds as we go inside of 7 kilometres to go right now.
It was 7 kilometres to go. Here's the chance to just patch him up, and all referees would turn a blind eye to this, I'm sure of that. Unai Echeverria, the Venezuelan flag. That must be more like the Colombian flag. Is that the Venezuelan flag? Doesn't look like the Venezuelan flag to me, but it's supposed to be Venezuelan.
They're very similar. I think that the colors are
the same.
reversed.
There's a badge in the middle or something, isn't there? That's right.
Yeah, and a badge in the middle, the middle stripe.
Anyway, he's under the 6 kilometre. I can understand 6 in any language. So he's 6 kilometres to go. And there's the ban up the road. So they're still holding on very close here. A bit of a desperate scurry. But I think there's no doubt now that these boys are going to decide the day.
Oh, they certainly are. It's amazing how they opened up the gap. It was almost everyone in the same straight with about 30 kilometres to go. Then all of a sudden the elastic snapped and they stretched their advantage out to a minute, then 1.5. And the last time check we got was 2 minutes over the main field. Fabian Jecker well behind right now. He will just try and ride to the finish line over the last 10 kilometres. Very tough for him because he'd actually put an awful lot of work into the breakaway for it to be a success. And let's not forget, he actually finished pretty high up in the overall classification last year, finishing 13th overall. These guys are now in the outskirts of Burgos, a very famous place in the world of professional cycling, because every year we have the Tour of Burgos, as this man now is hoping to write his name into the record books of winning a stage of the Vuelta a Espana.
And his first win for 2 years or more. And 5 kilometres to go for Unai, while David here is keeping an eye on the boys, and every time somebody leaps off the front, this time it's Gutierrez, he jumps on him and then won't go through, and he's looking for the next man to attack. This is all working very well for David because he packs a sprint and he's not doing much work here.
Well, Van Geulen is like seems like the only man who hasn't given up on this breakaway so far. Even Nozal's begun to pull through a little bit. Jose Enrique Gutierrez, a very strong bike racer, lacking a little bit of fitness for this. He's done a lot of races already this year. Unai Echeverria saw his chance, took his chance. He had a teammate, and now he's pouring on the coals. He's got a 27-second lead now. He's gaining a couple of seconds with each kilometer. He has a very good chance, if he doesn't get too tired, too full of lactic acid, to stay all the way to the finish. And thanks to David Echeverria, his teammate, he is closing down every time one of these other riders tries to make a move. He's dead onto their wheel immediately. Here's the Kelme director asking Enrique Gutierrez, asking the other riders to please contribute to have a chance, but there will be no cooperation whatsoever from that man in orange, David Echeverria. He knows exactly what he needs to do: block all these riders, jump straight onto their wheels if they happen to attack.
He's a good professional too, a very nervous character. Look at him, he's looking all over his shoulders here, waiting for the next move to go, and as soon as anybody gets out of the saddle, he'll be right onto the slipstream. He's doing a good job because you can see that advantage is still starting to extend for Unai Echeverria. Right now it's up to 33 seconds. It's a difficult one to win though, because the run in here to Burgos this afternoon is long straightaway, so they've nearly always got him in sight, and almost certainly they will be banking on the helicopter flying above him, and that will give an indicator of just where he is out on the open road. But they're doing the wrong thing here right now to try and catch him. To do it, they really must try and work together, although the man trying to slip off the front there was Isidro Nozal, probably the freshest man in this chase group.
Well, as long as he stays ahead of the bunch behind, he is the next leader of the Tour. He just needs a measurable gap of 1 second. There's nobody in this breakaway or ahead who can affect his forthcoming golden jersey. Van Geulen showing a little bit of inexperience now. He's been panicking to try and close this gap down, doing most of the work, and this is what happens when your more experienced professionals catch you on one leg and they bail you out of the back. So he's going to have to work very hard now to get back in. That's another man gone as we go under 4 kilometres to go now for the leader. Now, a little aside they may not welcome me telling you is that both the Echeverrias were kicked out of the Tour de France this summer for taking pace in the same time trial, stage number 12. They were both eliminated when they added the penalties to their time at the finish, and the result was they were outside the time limit.
That was just outside of Toulouse on the stage to Cap Découverte, the time trial where we saw even Lance Armstrong put into difficulty by Jan Ullrich. Although Armstrong finished second on that occasion, he lost almost a minute and a half to the big German, who really then started to look like a possible winner to the bike race. Well, charging into Burgos here, by the way, it's the 10th time that the Vuelta a España has had a stage finish here. The last man to win we talked about a lot earlier on, Alessandro Petacchi. Before that, it was also a sprinter, Jans Verrada, and before that, it was the team manager of US Postal Service, Johan Brunel. And a little further before that as well, right back in 1983, a good old mate of ours, Bob, won the stage here, Noël de Joncker.
Noël de Joncker.
That was the last friend you had, wasn't it, Bob?
He was the last man to fire me when I was racing in Europe. So. He was a great bike racer in his own right.
He certainly was.
He won over
80 races, 80 professional races, and a lot of those were big races like stages in the Vuelta a España. He was a kind of bike rider who could win himself 10 or 12 races before the month of May. And then he never did anything at all for the end of the season, because let's not forget the Vuelta a España used to be the first of the 3 classics in April, followed by the Giro d'Italia, and then the Tour de France in July. But Noël was a great bike rider, and this man is trying to write his name on the record books alongside some of those very famous names who've won here.
That's right. This race moving to its new dates about just on 10 years ago this year, to try and accommodate the new positioning of the World Championships in the month of October. This is a good warm-up race for that event. And Unai Echeverria, who knows, could be looking for the World Championship title for Venezuela in October when the race takes place in Hamilton in Canada. Well, there's the, what's that now, Bob? Is that the 3 kilometre sign? I think it probably is. 3 kilometres to go.
I think that's the...
Or is it 2?
Red kite.
It's the red kite.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness me, he's flashing down the finishing straight here.
Big
1 kilometre
absolutely.
now, massive tailwind. He's probably covering these kilometres about 1 minute and 2 seconds just now. With this tailwind, but he's got 1 kilometre to go. It's 2.5 years, more or less, give or take a month or so, since Unai Echeverria won a professional race. He's now looking for a big result here, and I think he's richly deserved. He took the gamble a long way out, a little bit further than I imagined. There was a time when they pulled them back to 1 minute. The peloton seemed to be coming back into play. All of a sudden, nobody would do any work. Teammates of the breakaways got to the front, caused problems with the chase, and here's the result. When you've got 2 team riders in the lead group, Bob, your team manager gets very upset if you don't win the day.
Yes, absolutely. They would be very upset if they missed out on this really good opportunity to win a stage. Euskaltel Euskadi, one of the smaller Spanish teams, but the most aggressive, the most competitive, and they're going to get a big payoff here by Unai Echeverria winning a stage of the Tour of Spain, the home tour, and so very important to all these Spanish teams on a sponsorship level. This will be fantastic result for the Euskaltel Euskadi team.
Now with 13 minutes to make up, he's not going to take on the race lead here, but he's not going to even give that a second thought. Unai Echeverria of Venezuela, and almost certainly the first ever cyclist from his country to win a stage of the Tour of Spain, is coming down the home straight with all the time in the world now. Zip up the jersey, 2-handed salute, 3.5 hours the stage today, and the clock starts now. It won't count up towards 13 minutes though, so he can just bask in the sunshine of, oh dear me, steady on. We've had 1 crash today, caused out on the road by a motorcycle, and Fabian Jecker falling there. He's on the road. Let's hope he starts tomorrow. This will be the sprint now for second place. Now Gutierrez can pack a punch here, but he's sat at the back, and Echeverria looking now to make it a 1-2 for Euskaltel Euskadi. He certainly is holding on there and looking to make the move around. I think it's Cardenas who is leading it out for the finish. Oh no, it's Isidro Nozal. Nozal is the new leader of the Tour. That is not in dispute. But here comes the pocket dynamo, David Echeverria, who gets a 1-2 for Euskaltel Euskadi on the line. Fabulous result, well worked, great tactics, and I think third place there went also to, I'm not sure who it went to, but it doesn't really matter. Nozal was right there for 4th, I think Nozal got, and that would give him the lead. Now there's a big haul for the line. Now we might see a difference in the results here, because Zabel again mixing, but about 8 to 9 men down. And I don't think we're going to see Petacchi bother with this one. It doesn't look as though he's going to take place in the bunch sprint. I hope we get to see the front here. Oh, there they are. As we come up towards the line now, we've got the Fuenlabrada team there trying to get in on the mix. But on the far right, Benoit Joachim is having a little dig. And Ado is coming through on the inside. But through the middle comes Eric Zabel. And the champion of Germany makes it look easy. He'll just kick himself now. It wasn't for first place. And Pataki, of course, not bothering to sprint for that one.
All Pataki's thinking about basically is trying to get himself stage wins in the big grand tours like the Giro d'Italia, the Tour de France, and of course here the Vuelta a Espana. On the other hand, the man who won the points competition last year, Eric Zabel, will be also trying to make sure he gets points on every stage that he can. This is a group of riders just tailed off towards the run-in. There is Matt White, the US postal rider from Australia, on the left-hand side. And just trying to have a look back to see who else is in there. There's Bobby Julich as well in that group. These riders getting tailed off in the last few kilometres. And there is Levi Leipheimer as well in the orange jersey just at the back of this group. So it's not going to be Leipheimer's Vuelta a España this season, that's for certain.
Well, it's true, but Levi will need to ride this tour all the way to Madrid, I think, to get some solid base into his body, which he can build on over the winter months, because he had that unfortunate crash which kept him out after the Tour de France. So he'll be back, and let's hope that he can get round to Madrid. It's going to be a tough few roads ahead, though, with the mountains now not too far away. We'll take a break. Rejoin us for the presentations.